Canadians are not ready for the devastation that is coming. Mark Carney just signed Canada's economic death warrant. Not only is he talking about breaking down the relationship with the US yet again, not just with trade this time, now he's using actual combat-coded language. It's crazy to see. And of course, the mainstream media is not calling out his misrepresentations or any of the lies that he has in there. They're cheering it on. But they're not the only ones who are cheering it on. There's randomly conservatives saying this was a good speech. This has to be called out right away because this is going to be catastrophic for Canada if it's followed through on. And luckily, we get to call it out today. There's a bunch of context, a bunch of things we get to bring to the table. There's lots to talk about in today's video. So let's get into it. All right, so before we get into Mark Carney's insane comments in how he's treating the US and how he's treating the Trump administration, here's a post, or context, that came out the same day that Mark Carney put out his anti-American, basically war cry, which is crazy. So Scott Bessent put this out. He said, "This past Friday, I met with Canadian Minister of Finance and National Revenue, François-Philippe Champagne, to discuss ongoing economic cooperation between the United States and Canada. We discussed the conflict with Iran, energy markets, and ways to build on progress made in our critical minerals collaboration. I also encouraged Canada to continue to assist the Trump administration's efforts to tackle drug trafficking and related with illicit financing." So basically things that Canada has been warned about for quite a while by multiple administrations. So he's like, hey, keep up on that management. Look at the tone here. Look at him saying, we want to work with Canada. We want collaboration. We think there's ways for us to have partnership. Also, side note, hilarious how much we've got Scott Bessent mogging François Philippe Champagne. We look at this tall, handsome gentleman, and then this is the Canadian representative. Not good optics for Canada in this photo. Pretty embarrassing for François Philippe Champagne there. But yes, just wanted to show that quickly before we get into the Mark Carney comments, because contextually, here's the US side. Here is America trying to seemingly build bridges and get things done. Also, little off topic, but hilarious update. Doug, the liberal slug Ford himself, reverses course, and he's planning to sell the private jet that he bought for himself. We covered it in a previous video. Doug Ford bought an almost $30 million private jet just so he could fly down to the United States and basically be an anti-Trump, anti-American force for Canada, because for some reason, every single Canadian politician decided being anti-America is the way to win. And you know what? Canadians do keep cheering it on. And this video right here, which I think is legitimately insane, and they're calling it forward guidance because, that comes from all of the Federal Reserve and the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. They use those terms. And Mark Carney, he's the banking guy, and he gets to take credit for this, for inventing it. And the media just does not like to fact check Mark Carney when he makes false claims, lies, whatever he wants to do. But in this video, he's literally talking about going to war with the United States, not just economically. Holy smokes. Oh, by the way, this is at 1.25 speed. You can't really tell because Mark Carney talks so slowly, but if it seems a little bit off, it's because it's sped up because he is very slow at speaking.
I know from experience that outside forces can sometimes seem overwhelming. My previous jobs at the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, it was part of my duties to make regular public reports on what we were doing to manage the economy. And I remember during the financial crisis, when there was a real risk of panic, I developed a practice called forward guidance. It was designed to assure people that however difficult the situation seemed on any given day, that we were acting, and importantly, that we would continue to act with overwhelming force against our problems until they were solved.
So that claim right there, of course, the media didn't want to fact check him, but forward guidance has essentially been in practice for like more than 50 years. So the idea that Mark Carney developed this cutting edge technique of, forward guidance, no, he did not. But what we do have is a clip of him from the Bank of England here. Here is him doing one of his little forward guidance speeches. Remember, when he was leaving the UK as the governor of the Bank of England, they were calling him Carnage Carney for how much damage he did.
The UK is entering a decade of potentially profound structural change. New trading arrangements will be struck, a new immigration policy will be introduced, major initiatives are likely on infrastructure, regional development, and the transition to a lower carbon economy. The MPC will need to assess the implications of all these developments for the balance of supply and demand and set monetary policy to deliver price stability in a way that helps smooth adjustment and supports jobs, and growth for the good of all of the people of the United Kingdom.
So he is saying those exact things in Canada right now. Those are points that he is using right now inside of Canada in his guidance, in what he's telling Canadians, in how he's saying, oh, we're changing the trading relationships with the US, like all of these ruptures. So this guy is coming into Canada about to destroy us by breaking down the relationship with the United States. And we're seeing he did the same thing in England. Here we go.
And that's the spirit I'm talking to you about today. Security can't be achieved by ignoring the obvious or downplaying the very real threats that we Canadians face. I promise you, I will never sugarcoat our challenges. Instead, I will talk with you directly and regularly about our plan, why we're doing what we're doing, what's working, what isn't, and what we're going to do next. So here's the current situation. The world, as I said earlier, is more dangerous and divided. The U.S. has fundamentally changed its approach to trade, raising its tariffs to levels last seen during the Great Depression. Many of our former strengths, based on our close ties to America, have become our weaknesses that we must correct.
So just that point right there is so funny, because every time he says the world is more dangerous and divided, he says that and then says we have to move away from the US. And then the idea is, we connect with China and these other places. So the only point he could possibly be making is the world is a more dangerous and divided place. And the actual threat is the United States. Because if the idea is the world is more dangerous and divided, why would you want to move away from the United States, who we share the largest land border in the world with, who we've traded with for hundreds of years, we share a culture with, we share a language with, we share all of these things, but the world's more dangerous and divided? Why would you go more global? Why would you move away from the country, the nation that provides the best chance of success, security, and safety, unless you're calling them the actual danger that is dividing the world and is dangerous that we have to move away from, okay? So that's what you have to remember. That's the point he's making.
Workers in our industries most affected by U.S. tariffs, in autos, in steel, in lumber, are under threat. Businesses are holding back investments, restrained by the pall of uncertainty that's hanging over all of us.
The uncertainty that comes from the Canadian government refusing to approve projects or get anything done, have clarity on their regulations, like we talked about, that mining company. I'm going to keep freaking bringing that up, but they were told, hey, 80 days, we'll get you approved. Now here we are, a year later.
U.S. has changed, and we must respond. Canada Strong is our plan to build Canada by Canadians, for Canadians. It will attract new investment.
Tell us what a Canadian is.
So we can build more for ourselves, striking new partnerships abroad, so we can sell into new markets.
I love that he used a clip of India there, starting new partnerships abroad, and it's just him and Modi in India. But the other funny thing is, too, we're going to attract all this foreign investment. We're going to be signing these new deals. Well, during a visit to the USA last week, energy experts told the MPs that they're not even looking at Canada to invest because of regulations and therefore lack of profits. But this is actually even more important in a second.
An example, last week, I was part of a meeting in the United States, and a large energy producing company said, look, we're not even looking at Canada right now. And even though our companies presented that we had the lowest emissions on LNG, it's our policy regulations that are making it unstable and not profitable for companies to come in and invest in us. So to hear that today in 2026, that is extremely disheartening.
Extremely disheartening indeed. And why this is extra important, that those are American companies saying they don't want to even invest in Canada right now. This absolute bozo, this dunderhead, this kooky, wacky, Weasley little man constantly brags about how Canada has the best direct foreign investment coming into Canada in the last 20 years, since 2007. It's all American money. It's all USD buying Canadian businesses that he's bragging about. As he's talking about removing our relationship with the US, using war language, mind you, he's bragging about US investment inside of Canada while we're learning now US companies are saying, I don't know what the hell you guys got going on up there.
It's about taking back control of our security, our borders, and our future. There are some who say there's no need for a comprehensive plan. They believe we should wait it out in the hope that the United States will return to normal, that the good old days will come back. But hope isn't a plan, and nostalgia is not a strategy. And the days that young Canadians have known all their lives haven't been that good. Their lifetimes have been marked by a series of shocks and crises from abroad: the Iraq War, the global financial crisis, COVID, and now this.
So the idea The idea that's so funny that Canadians are struggling because of the Iraq war is so funny to me. Like, young Canadians have had it rough. The Iraq war, do you guys remember that? We've had it really tough here in Canada because of the Iraq war, which again also implies it's an American problem. Once again, so funny. And COVID too, easily avoidable. You didn't have to shut down the economy and bring in billions of Indians through Operation Caribomb and be like, yeah, this will fix everything.
We have to take care of ourselves because we can't rely on one foreign partner. We can't control the disruption coming from our neighbors. We can't bet our future on the hope that it will suddenly stop. But we can control what happens here. We can build a stronger country that can withstand disruptions from abroad, that creates good jobs here at home, that's a leader in this new world with a vast network of reliable allies. That's the Canada Strong plan we're putting into action. Its goals.
Putting into action? No. Talking about, yes. And again, like I'm going to keep saying it, and I've said it forever. Diversifying is good because that means everything he said there could be great. Let's build Canada. Let's get new trade deals. Let's expand into other markets. After we get a deal with the United States, it doesn't have to be one or the other, but these absolute idiots keep being like, you know what? We're going to not trade with the US and we're going to try and compete in other markets where other countries, other nations are already competing in those markets. They already make it tough to enter those markets. The only thing that these countries want from us is our natural resources that we refuse to develop. We refuse to allow these projects to go through. We could have a deal with the United States and then grow on top of that, make ourselves a more valuable partner. There's just so stupid how easily fixable this is.
Are ambitious to catalyze $1 trillion in investment, to create one Canadian economy out of 13, to build new trade and energy corridors, and to double the size of our clean energy capacity. Yes, that's ambitious. But in a crisis, fortune favors the bold. And there's comfort and confidence to be found in our country's history. After all, our ancestors built an improbable country in an inhospitable land where people were free to live their own lives.
So I love that he brought that up, not because I think he believes in this, but Canada is an incredible history. The way that the settlers came to Canada, which was scary, it was barren, it was dangerous. Like, think about just being in a dark forest in Canada 400 years ago. It would have been terrifying, and our ancestors built one of the best nations in the world. He knows the history, and that's why it's so perfect that we're getting more of these guys on the stamps, like Operation Caribomb. They gotta shut up about the Komagata Maru. They should never have been here. It was in a ship full of illegal aliens trying to sneak into Canada. We told them they couldn't come in. They ended up taking the lives of Canadian officials, and we're like, wow, we feel so bad about this. No, we do not feel bad. The ship should have been turned around. I do not care. The fact that we're putting them on the stamps as if it's like Canada's a national history that we need to be rewarding. Oh, he knows the history. He knows who built Canada. He knows what's going on, but they want us to just forget and be like, actually, buddy, it was Indian who built Canada.
When I get into the office, I always look at this statue on my desk. It was given to me by Mike Myers just over a year ago. And this is General Isaac Brock. Brock was a hero who fought and gave his life for our forebears in the War of 1812. Before Canada even existed on paper, it had a shape in Brock's imagination. Faced with the threat of an American invasion, Brock built alliances across our land and inspired what would eventually become Canada. Others carried that effort forward. People like General de Salaberry, citizens like the Voltigeurs, who defended Chateauguay, and Indigenous heroes such as Chief Tecumseh, who united Indigenous nations across the Great Lakes to resist U.S. expansion and protect their lands.
I would love for you to explain to me here during this brief little history lesson, very funny framing here. He's somewhat comparing himself to Isaac Brock, one of Canada's most famous heroes, one of Canada's most famous generals, being like, he held off the Americans and he really fought for Canada. That being said, I don't see where Gurpreet Singh fits into this.
They battled together against a common foe, and by doing so, they made our life today possible.
Common foe of the United States who General Mark Carney is going to fight against.
This statue of General Brock that I see every morning in the Prime Minister's office reminds me that when we're united as Canadians, we can withstand anything. Long before
What is a Canadian?
Confederation, our country was forged by Indigenous peoples, coureurs de bois and voyageurs, who mapped their continent and built vast trading networks from coast to coast to coast before the Americans had even left St. Louis. When the Second World War ended,
Just has to take a little shot at America there.
Canada.
But also, that is, okay, first of all, that's another thing that I think, just from a history perspective, that more people need to recognize. Yes, the British and the French were building Canada for hundreds of years before Confederation. So the idea that Canada only actually started in 1867, you didn't have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms until 1982, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, Canada existed for 400 years. It has a very old history that people just don't like to acknowledge, because then that means, oh, hey, buddy, how doing, had nothing to do with it. Because if they can make it newer and younger, hey, buddy, how doing, 10 Sikh guys worked at lumber mill 100 years ago, so we built Canada.
Canada was ambitious, determined, and united in a mission to build big things. The St. Lawrence Seaway, Trans-Canada Highway, Expo 67,
Cool
CN
stuff.
Tower. We built new neighborhoods for hundreds of thousands of veterans and their families. And we opened new universities to launch their careers. We've begun to make big structural changes in the Canadian economy. And they're all designed to make us stronger at home and less reliant on the United States. On housing, we're taking a solution from the past, modernizing it, and creating a new housing agency to build affordable homes faster and transform the housing sector in the process. It's already up and running. And though we have a ways to go yet, housing affordability is already improving. For example, asking rents across Canada at their lowest level in nearly 3 years.
Are rents falling? Absolutely. Are house prices going down? Absolutely. It's actually going to be an economic time bomb for Canada, and people do not realize how bad this is building in the background, because Canadians have lived by basically borrowing against their houses because we haven't produced. We had quantitative peopling inflating these prices, which allowed Canadians to feel like they were rich without actually creating, producing, or approving any projects, developing, innovating, whatever. So now when you see the Toronto condo market hits a 35-year low as sales continue to plunge with no new project launches, I wonder how that's looking. And is Build Canada, to Build Canada Housing, they've built almost nothing, and already the numbers around it are so staggering, so stupid. So if they're not building any houses, real estate sales are plummeting and rents are going down, but it's not because of the increase in supply. What is it, Mark? What is bringing the rents down? Oh yeah, it's because the immigration has slowed, and this entire time, the immigrants have been increasing the rents. The quantitative peopling of bringing in all of these people has been an economic bomb to the standard of living for Canadians. So feel free to mention the real reason that rents are going down, not because of Build Canada Homes. The mainstream media will literally fact check Pierre all day long when he's not even in charge. And then Mark Carney will make a claim like this where rents are continuing to go down because of our Build Canada Homes, which is so objectively not true, but they just are allowed to lie and do whatever they want. So who cares?
On energy and infrastructure, we're removing roadblocks that have been getting in the way of big projects. On trade,
No.
to sell our goods and create new jobs, we're building relationships with other countries. We've signed 20 new deals on 4 continents in less than a year because
They've signed 20 new MOUs, which are not enforceable, actionable. It's not real commitments. So no, there's no actual real deals being signed. But again, media won't call that out.
Canada has what the world wants, from energy to education. We have the values to which most of the world aspires. And we're a reliable partner in a world that is anything but. We're defending Canadian sovereignty by investing in our security and creating an industry to support it. We've embarked on an ambitious new mission to rebuild, rearm, and reinvest in the Canadian Armed Forces, with the single largest increase in defense investment in generations. As a result, recruitment to serve our country is already up 13%. This is the first time since the fall of the Berlin Wall that Canada will be spending what our allies expect and what we need for our defense.
I love it. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, again, here's some more war rhetoric. We're building up this defense to protect our sovereignty and security. Again, war rhetoric against who? Who are we defending ourselves against? Oh, you're positioning, as you talked about, Isaac Brock fighting against the Americans. Now we're talking about defending ourselves against the common foe. It's like, okay, so it's just full positioning and being like, we're going to stand up to the U.S. and our military is getting stronger for our security and sovereignty. Because remember, America is such a threat.
We're just getting started. Our defense strategy will catalyze $500 billion in investment in Canada over the next decade. Our plan for Canada is gaining momentum, and it will work. But we are not going to fix all our problems tomorrow. And there will be setbacks along the way.
Here is the forward guidance. Hey, Canadians, you're about to feel pain. There will be some issues along the way, aka we're headed into a recession.
The biggest payoffs will take time. So we know the Canadians need a boost today and a bridge to tomorrow. That's why, as we build a stronger economy, we're focused on lowering costs for Canadians. On day one in office, We canceled the consumer carbon tax. We cut taxes for 22 million middle-class Canadians, saving a two-income family up to $840 this year. We've cut taxes for first-time homebuyers, saving them up to $50,000 on their first homes. We've reduced tolls for vehicles on the Confederation Bridge and cut fares.
So just quick, we're not going to get into the details of every single claim here, but I will, every single time they say they cut the consumer carbon tax, I will remind people there is an industrial carbon tax still increasing the cost for Canadians on their day-to-day lives. Also, they put the carbon tax in place. They are asking you to be happy and thankful that they stopped beating you over the head with a stick, being like, what? I stopped hitting you. Shouldn't you thank me? And then don't get me started on the tax cuts. And even the House one, the prices was way more controlled by the anyways. Shutting down Operation Curry Bomb fixes most of those issues.
Launched something called automatic federal benefits. What it does is it will help 5.5 million low-income Canadians get the benefits that they're entitled to. We've made the National School Food Program permanent, feeding 400,000 children and saving their parents $800 a year on groceries. We're protecting the social programs that give every Canadian a fair chance to get ahead. Childcare, dental care, and pharmacare. We have everything we need here at home. Most of all, we have each other. Canadians.
So we're not actually going to produce more, and we're going to move away from our largest trading partner, but don't worry, we will give you all of the social care programs, which is just through taxpayer dollars or borrowed money that taxpayers will have to pay for in the future. Sounds like a good plan.
Canadians are the hardest working, best educated people in the world. We care deeply about each other and about our country. And Canadians have responded to this crisis with that spirit. We're buying Canadian. We're investing Canadian. We're exploring Canadian. Canadians everywhere are all in. We all desire a better country. We've been a great neighbor, always willing to help our friends in their times of need. We've stood shoulder to shoulder with our allies in some of the toughest circumstances imaginable. In Kandahar, on Juno Beach, and at Vimy Ridge. We've been a beacon to the world.
Again, in all of those places, where was Gurpreet Singh?
With our values and our ability to always overcome incredible challenges. The situation today feels unique, but we've faced down threats like this before. And in the weeks and months
Yeah, what were those, Mark? What were those?
ahead, we're going to want to talk with you again. I know you have busy lives and you don't need daily interruptions from me. But the truth is, there's a lot going on in the world, and not all of it is good. And the stakes could not be higher. The way we're going to get through this is together.
You should be scared. You should be very scared. We're going to have to fight. We're going to have to get together. We're going to have to rally, but it is not good out there in the world. So what we're going to do is we're going to globalize even more while the world continues to get scarier. So once again, either the US is the entire reason for Canadians to be scared, or there are a ton of global threats, and now is the time that we're choosing to become more global and introduce more risk to Canada from those global threats.
There's much forward guidance to be found in our shared history. We will get through this because of who we have always been. A country of tough, decent, caring people. People who grow stronger in adversity. It's our country. It's our future. We are taking back control to build Canada strong. It's already working. Let's keep going.
So now that he can remind Canadians how evil and scary the Americans are, I think it's a good time to remind everybody else that CSIS warned, which is basically Canada's CIA, security agency. Canada doesn't have like a CIA officially. We don't have an FBI officially. CSIS kind of does both. Warned in next election, Beijing would brand conservatives as Trumpian. Now Carney's campaign is doing it. This article is from a year ago. So a year ago, our security agencies were warning us that Beijing would be involved in the manipulation around the framing of the conservatives being Trumpian and America being bad. And now we're seeing, these shifts in sentiment. Canada now views China as 50% favorable instead of the US. So this is how crazy the TDS is getting. And I mean, it's happening in these other countries too. Again, it has to just do with straight up manipulation. But while Mark Carney's trying to take more control, while he's trying to get us to hate the freedom-loving US, he wants us to love China. Remember, we've got to diversify and work with our second largest trading partner, China. We've now got the Revolutionary Communist Party of Canada hosting events at a university, and the people are so involved because, they got to get their free unlimited social programs while we shut down all of the private business. So here they are singing songs. They're literally singing songs at a rally. This is how passionate, they're just the absolute indoctrination, the propaganda is how crazy it's getting in Canada. There you go. That's good. That's looking good for the future of Canada. But luckily, We've got Canadian Conservatives to stand up for Canadians. They are going to be the loyal opposition to the Liberals. You know, this the Conservatives' jobs to hold them accountable. Here we have Aaron O'Toole, or Aaron O'Fool, the absolute loser. This guy is such an idiot. And he decided now was a good time to support the Liberals. I really like this video. It's important to understand our history as we face an uncertain future. That said, I recall many pundits criticizing Harper for highlighting the importance of the War of 1812 at the bicentennial. I look forward to the contortions to come. Supporting the video while pretending to call out the media, sure. And keep in mind, this is him right here, this man who's wearing women's shoes and, you know, doing that. That's the previous leader. He was once the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and the media used to call him basically Trump, MAGA. They used to use every single term. Oh, look how right-wing Aaron O'Toole is. Aaron O'Toole, if he was a politician in the US, would literally be considered a left-wing Democrat by like a large margin. It's not even close. So the idea that he was this MAGA guy was always hilarious to me. As we can see, even though the US seemingly wants to get a deal done, CUSMA USMCA negotiations are going to fall apart. There's no way we hit the deadline based on all of this language, or Mark Carney has to do a 180 flip-flop and completely betray his audience, his voters, every single person who's paying attention to him as he says, like, we are going to move away from the U.S. We're going to take them on. War of 1812, Isaac Brock, war. He's making his stance clear. He's willing to risk Canada's entire economy just for political points, and people don't understand how deadly those consequences actually can be. Historically, when countries face depressions, which it looks like we are going to hit in Canada as we get the forward guidance to warn us, death tolls actually do rise in those countries. There is a legitimate risk to Canadian lives by Mark Carney's actions right now. It is getting crazy. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can do it through the link down below. You can also do it directly through YouTube. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.